evening. My name is Damaris Ramos, and I will be talking to you about the impact of the prison population in the United States of America. Did you know that the government raised more than $3 trillion from the taxpayers' money every single year? Did you also know that $39 billion from the taxpayer money is spent on the prison population? Did you also know that only $26 billion is spent on education in the United States? And it is very important that we think about that, because at the end of the day, as individuals, we're also affected by the prison population of the United States of America. United States has the highest prison population in the whole world. We have a prison population of over 2 million. Compared to the other nations, we have about 1.5 million people more than any other nation in the prisons. There are other alternatives to incarceration in order to reduce how much money is spent in the prison population. The money can not only be spent on education, but it can also be spent on the alternatives to incarceration. And that's what we're going to talk about today. As a taxpayer person, somebody that pays the taxes, we need to be aware of what's being taken from us, and it's probably being spent the wrong way. We should be putting money into education and prevention programs, and that way we can reduce how much money it is spent on the prison population. An alternative to incarceration is any kind of punishment, given to an individual other than time in prison. Some of the alternatives for incarceration are drug rehabilitation programs, faith-based programs, probation, home confinement. But we're going to talk about just a few different specific ones, even though there are many of them. An alternative to incarceration, usually punishments other than prison or jail time, place serious demands, and this is very important, on offenders and provide them with the intensive court and community supervision. Just because certain punishment does not involve time in prison does not mean that we are being soft on crime. The reality is that more than half of the prison population are non-violent offenders, are people who have been incarcerated for drug offenses. And the statistics have shown that most of those people are people who have drug problems. So we are putting people in prison who should be in rehabilitation programs. Alternatives can also reduce prison and jail costs and prevent additional crimes in the future. Before we can maximize the benefits of alternatives to incarceration, however, we must first repeal mandatory minimum sentence. And I want to explain real quick about what is a mandatory minimum sentence. It's a guideline that Congress passed that everybody should be sentenced according to, the offense, everybody equal. But what that does, it takes away the power that the judge has to sentence that person according to the crime and according to that person's history. So we're taking the power away from the judges with mandatory minimum sentences. So like we mentioned before, an alternative to incarceration are faith-based programs. And there was a post on the Palm Beach Post, they talked about how this farm, these people had this farm, and they came up with a plan to put up a faith-based program, and they're sending women there who are being rehabilitated in a very healthy atmosphere. That way, when that person completes the program, they can go back to the community and not reoffend. The idea for this is to deter the person from committing any crimes in the future. Another alternative to incarceration are community corrections. Probation keeps the offender in the community, but put limits and obligations on his freedom. The probation officer can show up at their house, they can show up at their job site, and that costs less than keeping a person in prison. Another one is the drug courts. Drug courts, in a drug court, the judge and the prosecutors are directly involved with the offender, and they can offer the opportunity to rehabilitate without obtaining a record. And the impact of obtaining a record is that in the future, the person will be hindered from obtaining an employment. And another point is that we're saving taxpayers money. There is $28,000 used every year to keep one person in prison, when that money can be put into more programs to help these offenders rehabilitate and also spend more on education. And yes, we should keep in mind that public safety will be the most important issue here, okay, and reducing the recidivism. Another one will be education and preventive programs. Education and preventive programs will reduce crime and will reduce how much money is spent on warehousing the people instead of rehabilitating them. And I want to encourage you today to vote for politicians who believe in rehabilitation while the person is incarcerated. Thank you.
Yeah.